There are mornings when the moment we open our eyes, a faint heaviness drops into the chest, as if an invisible hand had slipped another stone into the satchel of the heart. No storm has just blown past. No one did anything unforgivable the night before. And yet fatigue rises quietly like a thin mist wrapped around the roof. We can't quite name it. We only know we're hovering inside a pocket of emptiness, not quite pain, not quite joy, just enough to slow the feet, fade the gaze, and lengthen the breath. If you're in that moment, I'd like to invite you to sit a while. Set the invisible bag down beside you and simply listen to your heartbeat. The Buddha teaches suffering does not always come from fresh wounds. More often it comes from what we've clutched for too long. Anger left unlaid, expectations that swelled. Who knows since when, like summer clouds. Old memories standing under the eaves, and whenever the wind blows, they sting the eyes. Like a mountain stream, only when branches and stones are cleared from the flow does the water turn clear. The mind is the same if we want it light. Stop piling on what is no longer needed for the journey. I remember a story from a fishing village by the sea. Every night, the old lighthouse keeper climbed the spiral stairs, oil can in one arm, a basket of wicks on her shoulder, a frayed conical hat on her head. One year the storms came one after another, wind and rain clawing at everything. People told her, "Don't go up anymore, it's too dangerous." She only smiled. If the light doesn't shine, boats lose their way. But by season's end, they noticed she'd switched to a lighter basket and stopped carrying the tools she didn't need. "I can't carry everything," she said, "but I can keep the light." That simple answer was like a gatha. We cannot hold the whole world, but we can keep the lamp in our heart. The rest, put it down. Sit with your spine gently upright. Let your feet touch the ground like roots finding soil. Breathing in, know you are breathing in. Breathing out, know you are breathing out. Between those two tides of breath, you can softly ask yourself, what inside my heart's satchel has grown too old? Perhaps it's a curt remark you've been hugging like a thorn. Perhaps a failure that made you wary of beginning. Perhaps the unthinking habit of comparing yourself to others so that each glance in the mirror is another tiny wound. One by one, give them names. Name them to recognize them to release. To release is not to toss away. To release is to loosen each knot with a warm hand. Like the craftsperson untangling a snarl of silk, haste will snap it, skill will smooth it. Kindness to oneself is the needle, mindfulness the thread, wisdom the light shining on the tangle. When we see clearly, the snare loses its power. It no longer drags us, we choose our steps. Someone once asked me, "Where is peace?" I answered, "Not a place, but a way." In a noisy city, someone sips tea and the mind is still as a lake. In a silent forest, another hears thoughts roaring like a waterfall. True peace doesn't require the sky to clear and the clouds to part. Peace is when rain drums on the roof, and inside you, there's a dry porch where you can sit and pour yourself a cup of the ordinary. One evening, my teacher handed me a small cloth pouch with 5 smooth, round pebbles. "Carry them," he said. "Each day, when something unnecessary arises, anger, fear, regret, craving, clinging, take out one pebble and set it somewhere. At day's end, see how many remain." The practice turned out to be very simple. Recognize the excess and give it permission to go. Some days, I returned with all 5 still weighing my pocket. No matter, my teacher said, do it again tomorrow. In the way. The miracle is not throwing everything away in a day, but the patient lightening bit by gentle bit, like snowmelt from the mountain, quiet yet persistent, carving itself into a stream. You can try it now. Imagine a dry leaf resting on your left palm, something that is past. On your right palm, a pebble, an unfulfilled wish. Arms spread, shoulders taut, heart heavy. Now exhale long and choose to set down only one, the leaf or the stone. Not both, not yet. Your body will answer at once, shoulders soften. The pulse steadies. The mind is the same. It doesn't demand heroics, only honesty. Don't mistake release for defeat. In the light of the Dharma, letting go is seeing dependent arising. When conditions are present, things come together. When conditions end, they part. You cannot force the sun not to set, nor command night not to come. People pass through our life like trains stopping at a station. Some sit beside us for 5 stops, 10 stops. Others stand near us once and get off. Our task is not to lock the carriage doors. It is to keep our luggage light, so that when the train changes tracks, we still have strength to smile. There will be days you stumble, breath frays, thoughts scatter. In that very moment, please don't scold yourself. Be like a rower meeting waves, not fighting the water, only angling the oars toward calmer current. A whispered sentence may help. I allow myself not to be perfect. I allow myself to set this down. Adverse conditions come to train the heart, not to prove we are weak. Each time we put something down, we do not become smaller, we become wider. Look closely at a bead of dawn dew. It perches on a blade of grass, glittering like a gem. When the sun rises, it dissolves. If the dew feared loss, what then? It does not know that dissolving is its way of returning to the sky. Our hearts keep yesterday's dewdrops a cold glance, a harsh judgment, a half-kept promise. We think holding on is remembrance, not knowing that remembrance has many forms. To remember with gratitude is light. To remember with resentment is heavy. Release doesn't erase traces. It changes how we carry them, from a load on the shoulder to a seed on the heart. On nights when sleep won't come, try changing how you enter the dark. Dim every lamp but one warm light. Place a glass of water by the window. Write down 3 things you clutched too tightly today. Fold the paper. Tuck it beneath the glass. Look at the still water and tell yourself, I entrust this to the night. In the morning, pour the water to a plant. We do not throw sadness away. We give it to the earth so it has a chance to turn into green leaves. Some will say, if I let go, will I still be me? You will, but a less strained you. The me we guard so fiercely is only a coat. When it's dirty, we wash it. When it's tight, we change it. We are not the coat. We are the warm space inside. The Buddha did not teach us to run from life. He taught us to take off the rain-soaked garment so the body doesn't catch cold. That is all. If you need a sign to begin, let it be this moment. Breathe in, place a hand on your chest. Feel the beat. Breathe out and silently name one thing you are ready to set down, something very small. A reflex comparison, a notification that unsettles you, an appointment kept from fear rather than love. Reschedule, gently silence the phone, walk slowly. Gift yourself a pocket of emptiness. It isn't frightening. It is the veranda where dawn steps in. Tomorrow rain may come again. The streets may roar, the work may return. But you will be different. You will know the way home. That path runs through breath, through a cup of tea, through the grateful glance you give yourself for choosing lightness. We do not promise a sky without clouds, only that we will learn to open the window. And this journey is only beginning. In the next stretch, we will look straight at the habits of clinging and learn the art of putting down with wisdom and compassion, like the lamp keeper who knows when to change the wick so the flame burns gentle. There are moments when you feel you've already released something, yet somehow it still lives quietly beneath the ribs, like a seed that hasn't stopped breathing. You tell yourself, "I've moved on." But a sudden scent, a song or a season turns, and there it is again. The same ache, smaller perhaps, but still pulsing. Letting go, it seems, is not an act done once, but a gentle practice repeated again and again, until even the need to let go dissolves. The Buddha once compared the mind to a house filled with guests. Joy comes, and we welcome it. Sorrow comes, we also let it in. But problems arise when we forget that every guest must leave. We polish the floor for sadness, build a new chair for anger, hang lanterns for nostalgia, and before we know it, we've mistaken them for family. To practice mindfulness is to remember that each visitor is only passing through. We bow to their coming, and we bow to their leaving. There's a story told in an old monastery at the foot of the Himalayas. A novice monk named Anand once approached his teacher troubled. "Master," he said, "I try to meditate, but thoughts crowd my mind like wild birds. I chase them off, but more come." The old monk smiled. "Do not chase the birds, my child. Just open the window." "But then won't they fly in?" "Yes," said the teacher, "and when they see nothing to perch on, they will fly out again." That evening, Anand sat by the temple's open window. The forest was alive with the song of crickets. His thoughts too fluttered in and out, regrets, desires, memories. But this time he did not chase them. He simply noticed here a bird, there a wing now gone. The night deepened. The moonlight spread on the floor. For the first time, he saw that peace was not the absence of thought. It was the space that allowed everything to come and go. Our own minds are just like that window. Every attempt to control what enters becomes a struggle. But when we keep the space clear and uncluttered, life breathes through us naturally. A passing sorrow, when allowed to move freely, will soon tire and leave. A joy, when not clung to, will ripen into gratitude rather than dependence. Let us return for a moment to our daily life, the crowded markets, the hum of traffic, the glow of screens. Notice how often we feed our restlessness. We scroll, we search, we reach always outward. It's as if we fear silence, fearing it might expose us to ourselves. Yet silence in the language of the Buddha is not emptiness. It is full presence. Like the still pond that reflects the moon, silence reflects the truth of who we are when we stop running. There was a craftsman who made bells for temples. He was known for his exquisite tone, a sound that lingered long after the hammer fell silent. When asked how he achieved it, he said, "I listen before I strike. Each bell already holds its song. My task is only to release it." Meditation, too, is listening before striking to hear the song already within us. Every breath, every thought, every heartbeat is part of that vast, wordless music. Sometimes healing begins not by fixing, but by hearing. When a wound on the heart is acknowledged, truly seen, it softens. Try it now. Recall something that still hurts. Don't explain it away. Don't justify. Just look at it as you would a child crying in the rain. You wouldn't tell that child to stop. You'd wrap them in a blanket, let them rest. That's what compassion toward yourself feels like. It isn't indulgence, it's understanding. The Buddha called it metta loving kindness, the kind of love that doesn't need reasons. When we practice loving kindness, we begin with ourselves. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be free. Then we extend it to someone we love. May you be safe. May you be peaceful. And finally, even to those who have hurt us. At first, this may feel impossible, like asking fire to bless the hand that touched it. But as the heart expands, you'll find that forgiveness isn't about approving what was done. It's about choosing not to burn any longer. A wise nun once said, "Hatred is like holding a burning coal, waiting for someone else to be hurt by it." The moment you drop the coal, freedom begins, not for the other, but for you. In a small temple garden, there grows a tree that blooms only once every few years. Its petals are pale gold, its scent faint as dawn. 1 year after a storm, the gardener found half its branches broken. Many monks mourned, but that spring, the tree still flowered, smaller, yes, but more fragrant than ever. When asked why, the gardener said, "Because it no longer wastes its strength on the broken parts." How gently those words teach every fracture is a teacher in disguise. When we stop mourning what's lost and begin nurturing what remains, life finds its own way to bloom again. Perhaps you too have a broken branch somewhere, a dream left behind, a friendship turned to silence, a part of yourself you no longer recognize. You do not need to cut it off, nor do you need to decorate it. Just let it be part of the tree. The scars, if bathed in awareness, can become the channels through which light enters. To see this truth is to glimpse the heart of impermanence. Everything changes not as a threat, but as a song. Clouds drift, rivers move bodies, age feelings shift. The Buddha's smile comes from understanding that change is the dance of life. The flower opens, the flower falls. Both are beautiful. The wave rises, the wave returns to the sea. Both are water. The one who understands impermanence no longer fears loss, for they see that nothing is truly lost, only transformed. If you ever stand by the shore at sunset, watch how the light touches the waves, each wave catching a glimmer before it folds into the next. No single wave owns the light, yet all are illuminated. So it is with us, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death, each moment a crest rising and falling in the same vast ocean of being. And when we forget this, as we all do, we need only pause, breathe, and look again. The truth is always here, as patient as the horizon. Tomorrow we will walk deeper into this ocean of understanding to explore the quiet strength of non-self anatta, and how realizing I am not mine becomes the key to true peace. There comes a moment on the path when you begin to see that what you call I is not a single solid thing, but a flowing river of moments, sensations, memories, thoughts, names, and roles. Each one rises and falls like bubbles on the surface of the stream. When the Buddha looked deeply into the nature of existence, he saw that there was no permanent self to be found, only a continuous process of becoming. This is anatta, the teaching of non-self, not a denial of existence, but a doorway to freedom. At first, the idea unsettles us. We have spent a lifetime polishing the mask of me, my story, my victories, my pain, my opinions. We guard it, defend it, embellish it. Without it, who would we be? But imagine a clay cup believing it owns the space within it. The space was there before the clay shaped it, and it will remain when the cup cracks. The clay only gives the space a temporary form. So too our body, our mind, our personality. They are the clay around the boundless awareness that simply is. The Buddha once told a parable of a traveler who carried a heavy raft across a river. After reaching the far bank, he wondered what to do with it. "Should I carry it on my back as I continue my journey?" he asked. The answer was clear. No, leave it behind. The raft served its purpose. Likewise, our sense of self is a raft useful for crossing, not for clinging. There was once a painter who worked by the sea. Every day he painted the same horizon, but never twice did it look the same. "You paint the same thing again and again," someone said. He smiled. "No, the sea changes, and so do I." The painter had discovered anatta without knowing the word. The self that painted yesterday no longer existed. A new one was painting today. To realize this is to be reborn in every breath. When you touch the truth of non-self, life becomes astonishingly gentle. You no longer feel the need to win every argument, to justify every feeling, to prove your worth through another's eyes. Anger loses its anchor because there is no fixed me for it to defend. Pride softens because there is no me to place above others. And fear fades for who is there to be destroyed. But non-self is not cold detachment. It's the beginning of deep compassion. When the walls of I and mine fall away, we begin to feel what the Buddha felt under the Bodhi tree, the pulse of all living beings in our own heartbeat. The boundaries blur. The suffering of others becomes as real as our own. We no longer love out of need. We love because there is no separation left. One evening in an ancient monastery, a monk named Sona sat in meditation. His mind was restless, his heart tight. "I'm trying so hard," he confessed to the Buddha, "but still I find no peace." The Buddha asked Sona, "Before you became a monk, what was your craft?" "I played the lute," Sona replied. "Tell me," said the Buddha, "what happens if the strings are too tight?" "They snap. And if they are too loose, they make no sound. So it is with your mind. Tune it not too tight, not too loose. That is the middle way." To walk the middle way is to understand that non-self doesn't mean self-neglect. The body needs care, the mind needs rest, the heart needs tenderness. We do not erase ourselves. We simply stop mistaking the reflection for the moon. When we act without clinging to a fixed identity, we act freely, like water taking the shape of any vessel, like wind moving through the world without trace. Imagine for a moment that your name disappears, not erased from the world, but gently lifted from you like a garment. What remains? Awareness, pure, wordless, boundless. The you that existed before anyone called you anything. When you rest in that awareness, you begin to see everything differently. The same world, but lighter, softer, more radiant. Once in a mountain village, there lived a woodcarver who made statues of the Buddha. People asked him why his figures looked so serene. He said, "Because I carve until I find the space within the wood that already looks like peace." When we let go of the idea of me, we too begin to carve away what is false until the peace inside reveals itself. To live with the wisdom of non-self is to walk in humility. You speak softly because you understand that words are like footprints on water, they vanish as they appear. You act kindly, not because you are trying to be good, but because goodness flows naturally from seeing that others and you are not too. You face suffering without panic because you know there's no one to possess it. There is only the arising and passing of conditions. Try this contemplation when you eat. Notice each bite entering, transforming, becoming you. Yet soon, even this you changes again. The cells renew, thoughts shift, moods drift. In a single meal, the universe rearranges itself countless times. Nothing is static. The more deeply you see this, the more impossible it becomes to hold grudges or chase illusions of permanence. A scholar once asked a Zen master, "What is the self?" The master handed him a mirror. The scholar looked at his own reflection. "I see myself," he said. The master smiled and turned the mirror toward the sky. "And now?" The scholar frowned. "I see nothing." Exactly, said the master. When the mirror stops holding, it reflects everything. In that reflection lies freedom. Not the freedom to have, but the freedom to be vast, open, ungraspable. When you no longer chase the self, you meet life as it truly is, unbound, luminous, ever-changing. You can laugh and cry and lose and love, but nothing sticks. You walk through the world like a wind bell, sounding only when touched and falling silent when the breeze stills. Non-self is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of belonging. When the illusion of separateness dissolves, compassion naturally arises. You see yourself in the hungry child, the withered tree, the weary stranger. You no longer ask, "Why should I care?" because you understand caring is what the universe does when it remembers itself. And when you finally taste that boundless compassion, a quiet joy appears, not the joy of possession, but the joy of participation. You are no longer a drop looking for the ocean. You are the ocean realizing it was never a drop. In the next part of this journey, we will enter that ocean fully exploring the great truth of interbeing the web of causes and conditions through which every breath, every leaf, every heartbeat is connected. There is a moment when you begin to see that nothing in this world ever truly stands alone. Every leaf that trembles in the wind owes its dance to the sun, the rain, the soil, the unseen roots beneath it, and even to the wind that seems to oppose it. In the same way, our very being is a symphony of countless causes and conditions, the breath of our parents, the labor of farmers, the warmth of the sun, the kindness of strangers. This is the teaching of Pratyasamutpada, dependent origination, or as Thai Nhat Hanh called it, interbeing. Nothing can exist by itself. A single flower is made of non-flower elements, clouds, sunlight, minerals, time, and love. If you take away the cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, no flower. Look deeply into your own life and you will see the same truth. What you call me is woven of everything that is not me. To recognize this is to awaken from the illusion of separation. There was once a monk who spent his life studying the scriptures. One morning, while drawing water from the well, he saw his reflection shimmer in the bucket. A breeze rippled the surface, breaking the image apart. In that moment, he laughed a deep, clear laugh that echoed across the monastery walls. A young novice nearby asked Master, "What made you laugh?" The old monk pointed at the water and said, "All my life I thought I was the reflection. Now I see I am the breeze. The breeze does not own the water yet. Without it, the reflection would never dance." So too, every joy and sorrow in our lives arises from infinite connections. To cling to one piece and call it mine is to forget the vastness of the web that holds us. When we remember that web, compassion arises naturally, for we realize that harming another is only wounding ourselves. Imagine a spider's web at dawn covered in dew. Each droplet mirrors all the others. Touch one, and the whole web trembles. Humanity is like that web. A smile offered in one corner of the world can soften a heart across the ocean. A word of hatred can darken skies far away. What we think, say, and do ripples outward endlessly. This is karma, not punishment, but resonance. We live inside the echo of our intentions. Once a farmer came to the Buddha frustrated. "I work hard," he said, "but the rains fail me. My oxen fall sick. My family complains. I have so many problems, Master. Can you help me?" The Buddha replied gently, "I cannot take your problems away. Everyone has about 83 of them. What I can do is help you stop adding the 84th, the thought that you shouldn't have any. The farmer frowned. How will that help me? When you stop fighting the web of conditions, said the Buddha, you learn to flow with it. The rain will still come and go, but your heart will remain clear. To live with awareness of interbeing is to live with reverence. You begin to bow not only in front of statues, but before raindrops, dust, and footprints. You start to see that everything you touch touches you in return. The bowl you eat from, the book you hold, the air you breathe, all are companions on your path. When gratitude deepens, consumption becomes communion. Every act turns sacred. One evening, a young nun in Plum Village asked her teacher Thay, "When I walk mindfully, whom am I walking with?" Thay smiled. "With everyone. Your ancestors are walking in your feet. The earth is breathing beneath you. When you step gently, the whole cosmos smiles. This is the beauty of interbeing. It dissolves loneliness. The moment you truly feel connected, even a single breath becomes enough. You see that you have never been alone, not even in your darkest hours. The tears you shed are not weakness. They are the river of life flowing through you, washing away illusion. Sometimes when I walk along the riverbank, I notice how the water touches both sides, never choosing one over the other. It receives fallen leaves and carries away debris without complaint. The river reminds me balance is born from inclusion. Life holds light and shadow, joy and loss. The wise do not divide them. They bow to both. When the Buddha taught dependent origination, he said, "This is because that is." It sounds simple, yet it is the heart of all wisdom. Suffering exists because of attachment. Attachment arises because of ignorance. Ignorance persists because of forgetfulness. But when mindfulness enters like a candle in a dark room, ignorance fades, attachment loosens, suffering dissolves. Every cause undone lightens the next effect. The chain that once bound us becomes a ladder toward awakening. Let us try a simple reflection. Think of one person who has hurt you deeply. Then think of the people who have shaped that person, their childhood, their fears, their unmet needs. Slowly, resentment softens into understanding. Understanding blooms into compassion. Compassion becomes freedom. That is how the cycle of suffering ends, not by revenge, but by recognition. The Buddha once picked up a single leaf in the forest and said to his disciples, "The truths I have discovered are like all the leaves in the forest. What I have shared with you is only this one leaf." What he offered was not dogma, but direction, a way to look deeply into life and see the threads that bind everything together. Try looking at your hand. Inside it are your parents, grandparents, the stars whose dust became your bones, the rivers whose water became your blood. When you lift your hand to wave or to comfort, the whole universe moves with you. Interbeing is not philosophy. It is the most intimate fact of existence. When you understand this, your heart grows quiet. You stop demanding life to be other than it is. You begin to cooperate with impermanence, to dance with uncertainty, to find harmony in what once felt chaotic. Gratitude becomes your natural state. You look at a meal and see sunlight, rain, soil, hands, and you whisper, "Thank you." In the next step of our journey, we will explore this gratitude more deeply, how it becomes the seed of compassion and the medicine for fear. For when you see that everything is connected, loving becomes the only possible response. When gratitude ripens, it no longer needs words. It becomes a way of seeing a quiet bow before all things. You wake in the morning and notice the light falling through the window. You know that sunlight has traveled millions of miles just to rest upon your face. You sip water, and somewhere deep inside the ocean touches your tongue. Gratitude is the art of realizing that nothing we receive is small. It turns every breath into a prayer without sound, every step into a homecoming. In the Buddhist path, gratitude katanuta is not merely saying thank you. It is awareness that life itself is a vast offering, a constant giving and receiving. When we forget this, greed and complaint grow like weeds. But when we remember, the heart softens into reverence. The Buddha taught that even the one who offers a single lotus petal with sincerity plants a seed of liberation in both giver and receiver. There was once a young monk who tended the temple garden. Every morning he swept the fallen leaves with devotion, though more kept falling each hour. One day, another monk teased him, "Why bother sweeping when the trees will shed again tomorrow?" The young monk smiled. "Because the leaves fall, I can sweep. Because I can sweep, I understand impermanence." His sweeping was not a task. It was gratitude in motion. We too can practice in that way, not by waiting for perfect circumstances, but by meeting each moment as a chance to give thanks. Gratitude is not blind to pain. It embraces pain as part of the full circle. When we can bow to both joy and loss, the heart becomes whole. Think of a mountain under the rain. The raindrops strike, yet the mountain does not curse the storm. It receives the water, lets it run into streams, and those streams become rivers that nourish the valleys below. Gratitude works the same. It takes the storms of life and turns them into nourishment for compassion. Once a traveler took shelter from a storm in a small hut. Inside lived an old woman who had almost nothing, a bowl, a pot, a few sticks of firewood. Yet she offered him tea made from rainwater and smiled as though she possessed the world. The traveler asked, "Aren't you lonely here?" She answered, "How can I be lonely? The rain keeps me company, the kettle sings for me, and the wind tells stories at night." That evening, as he listened to the wind himself, the traveler understood. Poverty is not the absence of possessions, but the absence of gratitude. Gratitude does not require great events. It hides in the ordinary. A bird returning to its nest, a stranger holding the door, the smell of bread from a distant kitchen, even the ache in our chest reminding us that we are still alive, still capable of feeling. Each moment whispers, "You are part of everything." In meditation, we can practice gratitude as a gentle recollection. Sit quietly. With each inhale, recall one thing that sustains you: the air, the earth, a friend's kindness. With each exhale, offer silent thanks. If sadness arises, do not resist it. Let gratitude and sorrow sit together like two old friends. You will see that one does not cancel the other. They deepen each other. To thank life, even while it hurts, is to begin healing. The Buddha once met a man grieving the death of his child. The man cried, "Master, why must I suffer so much?" The Buddha pointed to a field of ripened wheat swaying in the wind and asked, "Do you see how each stalk bends and rises again? Sorrow bends us. Gratitude helps us rise." The man wept again, but this time differently. His tears no longer sharp, but cleansing. He began to gather the fallen wheat heads, murmuring, "Thank you for showing me that love and loss grow from the same soil." We often think of gratitude as a response to goodness, but true gratitude arises from seeing the totality of life, the bitter and the sweet, the birth and the decay. To live gratefully is to see beyond duality. It is to realize that even pain has served as a teacher, that even mistakes have pointed the way. In this awareness, compassion blooms naturally. Because gratitude reveals how much we have been given, compassion becomes the impulse to give back, You begin to listen more deeply, to speak more gently, to move through the world like a lantern carried through the dark. There is a quiet strength in those who live this way. They are not loud, yet their presence warms others. They have learned the secret rhythm of giving and receiving the eternal heartbeat of the universe. To them, even silence is abundance. One evening, a teacher was asked by a student master, "What is the highest form of prayer?" The teacher lit a candle and said, "To see clearly." Gratitude is that candle. When lit, it doesn't change the room. It reveals what was already there. The faces, the walls, the imperfections all bathed in the same light. To see clearly is to live thankfully. When we live thankfully, we stop grasping at what is not yet here and stop resenting what has gone. We begin to dwell in the present, where everything needed has already arrived. If you wish to test the power of gratitude, try this small act before sleeping. Whisper, "Thank you" to 3 things from your day. Not only what pleased you, but what challenged you too. Do this for 7 nights. You will find that the mind grows lighter, the breath gentler. The world itself will begin to look softer, because the eyes that look have changed. Gratitude is the seed of compassion. Compassion is the flower of wisdom. Together, they form the garden of peace. When you water gratitude, compassion naturally blooms. And when compassion blooms, it gives shade even to those who have not planted it. As the evening deepens, remember, life is not something to conquer or correct. It is something to bow to. You don't need to possess it. You only need to appreciate it. The act of seeing beauty, even for a moment, is already enlightenment in disguise. And so, as we move forward, let us follow this fragrance of gratitude into the heart of karuna compassion, where love no longer depends on deserving, and kindness flows like a river that never asks who drinks from it. Compassion begins not with the world, but with the small trembling within your own chest. Before we can truly love others, we must learn to cradle our own suffering with tenderness, not to indulge it, but to understand it. The Buddha once said that compassion is born from the clear seeing of suffering. When we look deeply at our pain without turning away, we begin to hear the cry beneath it, the longing to be seen, to be understood, to be held. There was once a physician in a remote village who treated the sick without ever asking for payment. One day, a weary traveler came to him covered in sores. The doctor washed his wounds, fed him, and gave him rest. The traveler asked, "Why do you do this for a stranger?" The old man smiled, "Because when I see your pain, I see mine. There is only one body wearing many faces. That is compassion, not pity from above, but recognition from within." To live with compassion is to live with eyes that do not separate. You begin to notice suffering everywhere, in the exhausted mother on the bus, in the stray dog searching for warmth, even in the anger of those who hurt you. But rather than being crushed by it, you grow softer. Compassion is not heavy. It is light. It does not drown you. It teaches you how to float amidst sorrow. Sometimes people fear compassion, thinking it will make them weak. But compassion is strength made gentle. It is the mountain's stillness that endures the storm, the ocean's depth that absorbs every wave. The Buddha likened it to a mother's love for her only child, fierce, boundless, unconditional. When compassion fills the heart, the world no longer feels like a battlefield, but like a garden in recovery. Once a monk was sweeping the courtyard when he saw an injured bird struggling in the dust. He hesitated. The evening bell was ringing. Meditation was about to begin, yet something within him moved. He knelt, lifted the bird gently, and placed it under the shade of a tree, leaving a few grains beside it. That night, during meditation, his mind was clearer than ever before. The next morning, he found the bird gone, but the trace of its warmth remained on his palm. Compassion had left its blessing invisible, yet unmistakable. We often imagine compassion as something dramatic, but it is woven into the small acts of daily life. A cup of tea poured for someone before they ask, a pause before replying in anger, the patience to listen without fixing, the willingness to forgive not because the other deserves it, but because the heart is tired of carrying stones. True compassion has two wings: understanding and courage. Understanding sees clearly. Courage acts gently. Without understanding, compassion becomes sentiment. Without courage, it remains a wish. The path of the Bodhisattva is to unite both, to see the world suffering and still choose to love it. In the Jataka tales, it is said that long before his final birth, the Buddha was once a deer who offered his own body to save another creature. The story is not about sacrifice for its own sake. It is about recognition. The deer saw no boundary between itself and the other. It understood that all beings share the same heartbeat of fear and longing for peace. If we listen closely, we too can hear that heartbeat. It beats in the cries of refugees, in the loneliness of the elderly, in the quiet despair of those who smile every day. Compassion is not to drown in that pain, but to extend our hand from the shore saying, I see you. You are not alone. Sometimes a single act of recognition can save a life. To cultivate compassion, begin with yourself. Sit quietly and place your hand over your heart. Say silently, may I be kind to myself. May I forgive myself for not knowing better. May I rest in peace. Then imagine that kindness spreading outward to a friend, a stranger, an enemy, to the whole living world. The mind may resist, but the heart will understand. Compassion is not taught, it remembers. There is a saying, where compassion walks, miracles follow. The miracle is not that suffering disappears, but that the heart can hold it without breaking. It becomes like a bowl that, though cracked, still carries water, and in those cracks, light shines through. One night, an old nun sat beside a dying candle. A novice asked her, "What will you do when the flame goes out?" She replied, "I will sit with the dark until I can see by the heart." That is compassion, to stay with suffering long enough for love to become its own light. When compassion matures, it ceases to ask why. It simply moves like wind through bamboo, like water around stones. It no longer looks for reward or recognition. It acts because it cannot do otherwise. A compassionate being is like rain falling equally on roofs of temples and on weeds by the road. Such compassion does not depend on belief or status. It belongs to anyone who dares to open their heart. And when enough hearts open, the world itself begins to heal. Violence quiets, fear softens, and trust slowly returns, not as an idea, but as breath shared among all living things. In this way, compassion is the bridge between understanding and liberation. It transforms knowledge into wisdom and empathy into peace. It teaches us that no act of kindness is ever lost. It circles back in forms we cannot foresee. A smile today may become someone's courage tomorrow. As night folds over the horizon, remember the world does not need more perfect people. It needs more compassionate ones, those who can see pain and still love anyway. To live this way is to walk in the footsteps of the Buddha, whose every gesture was a healing. And as our journey deepens, we shall follow this compassion toward its twin wisdom. For only when love is guided by wisdom can it become truly boundless And only when wisdom is softened by love can it touch the human heart. Wisdom begins where compassion has cleared the mist. When the heart becomes tender enough to feel, the eyes become clear enough to see. Compassion teaches us to open the door. Wisdom teaches us to walk through it without fear. One is the warmth of the sun, the other is the light that shows the path. Together, they are the two wings of awakening. The Buddha once said, "There is no fire like passion, no chain like hatred, no net like delusion, and no river like craving." Wisdom is the quiet strength that helps us cross that river. It does not come from learning alone, but from seeing directly, seeing things as they are not as we wish them to be. There was once a king who sought the truth of happiness. He called upon scholars, monks, and philosophers, but none could satisfy his heart. One day, a wandering monk came to his court. The king asked, "Tell me, Holy One, how can I be wise?" The monk pointed to a bowl of clear water and said, "When the water is still, it reflects the moon. But when it's stirred, even the moon disappears. Be still. Your majesty and wisdom will find you." Wisdom arises from stillness, the stillness that listens before speaking, observes before judging, and breathes before reacting. It does not mean to withdraw from life, but to engage with it consciously, without the fog of ignorance. In that space of clarity, every event, even sorrow, becomes a teacher. Imagine a lantern in a storm. If we shield it too tightly, it suffocates. If we leave it unguarded, the wind extinguishes it. Wisdom is the balance between protection and surrender, knowing when to hold and when to let go. A wise person is not the one who knows everything, but the one who knows when enough is enough. Once a student asked his master, "How will I know that I have found wisdom?" The master smiled and said, "When you stop arguing with reality." Those words are simple, but they contain oceans. Much of our suffering comes not from what happens, but from the resistance we add to what happens. The moment we stop fighting life, peace quietly enters like dawn slipping through a half-open window. Wisdom does not seek perfection. It understands that even imperfection has its place. A cracked bell can still ring. Its tone may be different, but sometimes the world needs that difference. In the same way, our mistakes become echoes through which we learn compassion. A wise heart is not one without scars, but one that no longer hides them. In the forest of the mind, ignorance is like thick fog. Each breath of mindfulness clears a little space, and through that clearing, the light of understanding enters. Slowly, the fog thins. Trees appear, old memories, forgotten lessons, glimpses of insight. Wisdom doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds like dawn, softly, steadily revealing the world already there. There was a craftsman who made mirrors of polished bronze. When asked how he achieved such clarity, he said, "I polish until I see my face clearly, and then I keep polishing until I can see beyond it." This is wisdom, to see through the self beyond me and mine to the boundless field where everything arises and returns. Wisdom also means knowing that pain and joy are not enemies. They are travelers on the same road. To reject one is to lose sight of the other. The wise do not cling to joy nor run from sorrow. They walk beside both, bowing to each as a teacher. In that bow, they discover peace. Once a young monk sat by the river, troubled by doubt. His teacher joined him silently. After a while, the teacher picked up a leaf, held it against the light, and asked, "Do you see how thin it is? Yet within it runs all the sap that nourishes the tree. So too, within every question flows the truth you seek. Do not tear the leaf, hold it up to the light." The monk understood. Wisdom is not found by rejecting confusion, but by looking deeply into it. In daily life, wisdom manifests as simplicity: to eat with awareness, to speak truthfully, to choose kindness over cleverness. The wise do not need to prove themselves. Their peace speaks for them. Their silence is not emptiness, but understanding, the kind of silence that listens to the heartbeat of the world. And yet wisdom does not separate from emotion. It embraces it. It knows that tears and laughter arise from the same depth. When the mind sees clearly, the heart can feel freely without being swept away. It's like standing by a waterfall, hearing the roar, feeling the mist, yet remaining grounded on solid earth. We can cultivate wisdom through mindfulness, through meditation, through honest reflection. But above all, we cultivate it through humility, by acknowledging how little we truly know. A wise person keeps learning, not because they are ignorant, but because they recognize that truth is endless. The Buddha once lifted a single flower before his disciples. Only Mahakashyapa smiled. That smile contained a wordless understanding. Truth cannot always be spoken. Some wisdom is meant to be lived, not explained. When we live with wisdom, our steps become lighter, our words more measured, our presence calmer. We no longer need to convince others. We simply become the peace we seek. And when compassion and wisdom meet, something miraculous happens. A third light arises: liberation. It is the freedom that comes not from escaping the world, but from seeing it clearly and loving it fully. As our journey unfolds, we will now walk toward that light, the realm of liberation, where freedom is not a distant goal, but the natural fragrance of a mind that understands and a heart that loves. Liberation is not a place we arrive. It is a way of seeing. It is not somewhere beyond life's reach, but hidden within each moment of awareness. The Buddha called it vimutti, the freedom of the mind that no circumstance can imprison. To be free does not mean to have no chains around the body. It means that even when chains exist, the heart is unbound. We spend much of our lives searching for liberation outside of ourselves through success, recognition, control, or escape. But true freedom does not depend on what we own or where we live. It blooms the moment we stop being enslaved by craving and fear. You can sit in a quiet monastery and still be bound by desire. You can stand in a crowded city and still be completely free. Freedom begins when the heart ceases to grasp. Once there was a scholar who sought the Buddha and asked, "What is liberation?" The Buddha picked up a handful of leaves, opened his palm, and let them fall. The scholar waited for an explanation, but the Buddha only smiled and said, "When you can let go as these leaves do, you will understand." The scholar bowed deeply because he realized that freedom is not taught, it is released. Liberation is the soft dissolving of must into may. It is the silence that remains when the storm of wanting subsides. Imagine a bird that has always lived in a cage. The day the door opens, it hesitates. The sky looks too vast, the wind too strong. Yet when it takes its first flight, it realizes that the cage was never locked. Only fear kept it inside. We are that bird, and the sky has always been waiting. When we cling to our pain, our anger, our plans, our identities, we tighten the cage. Liberation asks us to trust the wind, to surrender not in defeat, but in faith. To surrender in this sense is to return to what is natural. The river does not force itself toward the ocean. It simply flows. The tree does not command the spring to come. It simply waits, rooted in patience. Freedom is this kind of knowing, effortless, grounded, serene. There was once a hermit who spent decades meditating in the mountains. One morning, as he was fetching water, the clay jar he used slipped from his hands and shattered on a stone. He froze, watching the water spill away. For a moment, sorrow rose. His only jar was gone. Then, as he gazed at the broken pieces, a smile touched his face. Finally, he whispered, "The jar has let go of me." That day, the hermit attained peace. Liberation does not always come with thunder. Sometimes it arrives with a single breath, a soft exhale after years of holding on. It is that instant when you stop demanding life to be different and simply see it as it is raw, beautiful, impermanent, sufficient. To taste freedom, we must also make peace with impermanence. Everything that arises must fall away. The flower that blooms must wilt, the sunset must fade, the body must age. But when we see impermanence clearly, instead of fearing it, we bow to its mercy. Because it is impermanence that allows growth, forgiveness, rebirth. If everything were frozen, nothing could heal. The Buddha said, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This turning is not rejection. It is release, like a hand unclenching after a long, hard grip. When you truly understand impermanence, you stop running after fleeting things. You begin to dwell in what cannot be taken away, awareness itself. Awareness is the open sky behind the clouds of thought. The clouds will always move across it, joy, sorrow, pride, regret, but the sky remains vast and untouched. Liberation is remembering that you are the sky, not the passing weather. Once a monk asked his teacher, "How do I know when I am free?" The teacher replied, "When you can meet both praise and blame with the same smile." To be free is to no longer be a hostage to other people's words. You act from understanding, not reaction. Your joy no longer depends on agreement. Your peace no longer trembles before opinion. Freedom also means forgiving, not because others deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Holding on to anger is like tying yourself to a burning torch and wondering why it hurts. Letting go does not mean erasing the past. It means refusing to let it chain your future. In meditation, liberation feels like the moment the body stops resisting the breath. Everything softens. The heart grows quiet, not empty, but vast. Thoughts come and go, but they no longer stick. You become the witness, spacious, steady, compassionate. The one who observes is free even while life continues to unfold. Some people ask, if I am free, will I stop caring? Quite the opposite. When you are truly free, you care more deeply than ever, because caring is no longer mixed with fear or expectation. You give without wanting love, without needing act, without clinging. That is the freedom of the awakened heart. There is an old verse. The bird sings, not because it has an answer, but because it has a song. To live in freedom is to live like that, to act from your nature, not from your fear. The flower doesn't bloom to be admired. It blooms because blooming is its way of saying thank you to the sun. As you walk this path, you may notice moments of stillness appearing between your thoughts, like quiet pools between ripples. Do not rush them away. Rest there. That stillness is not absence. It is your true home. Every time you return to it, you return to yourself, the self that needs nothing, fears nothing, clings to nothing. When you dwell in that home, even for a breath, you begin to taste liberation. And from that freedom, a gentle joy arises, not loud, but steady, like a lamp that burns without smoke. In the next part of our journey, we will follow this quiet joy, not the fleeting happiness that comes and goes, but the serene contentment that grows from within. For true joy is not found by chasing pleasure, but by resting in peace. True joy is not the laughter that fades when the music stops. It is the quiet glow that stays even in silence. It does not come from what we gain, but from what we understand. The Buddha called it sukha, a joy that is steady, deep, and selfless, born not of having more, but of needing less. It is not a mood. It is a way of being. We often chase pleasure, mistaking it for happiness. But pleasure is a visitor. It comes when conditions are right and leaves when they change. Joy, on the other hand, is a home built on awareness. It stays because it is not dependent on weather or applause. When we discover that difference, life begins to soften. We stop running after fireworks and learn to love the candle flame. Once a young woman came to a Zen master and asked, "Why is my heart so restless? I have what I wanted, yet I still feel empty." The master poured tea into her cup, filling it until it overflowed. The woman gasped. "Stop it spilling." The master smiled gently. "So is your heart. Until you stop pouring, there will be no space for peace." The woman bowed. That day she learned that joy is not something to fill ourselves with, but something that flows in when we empty out. Joy comes when we are fully present, not clinging to what is past, not grasping for what has not yet come. Have you ever noticed the stillness in early morning before the world wakes? The light hasn't fully arrived. The air is cool, the mind quiet. That moment holds a sacred peace, not because it's rare, but because we finally stop demanding it to be different. The Buddha compared the joyful mind to a lotus that blooms from the mud, yet remains unstained. Joy does not mean avoiding the mud. It means seeing that even the mud has purpose. Pain, failure, disappointment, these too are part of the soil from which awakening grows. When we embrace them not as curses, but as teachers, joy roots itself in us like a tree that no longer fears the rain. Once there was an old carpenter who lost his only son. For months he worked in silence, refusing comfort. One day, a friend visited and asked, "How do you bear the pain?" The carpenter said, "At first, my grief was like a heavy stone in my chest. I carried it everywhere. But slowly, I began to carve again. With each stroke, I whispered my son's name. Now the stone has become wood, warm, useful, alive. It still carries my tears, but it also carries my love. That is joy, not the denial of pain, but its transformation. When the heart stops fighting, what is joy slips quietly in through the cracks. It doesn't erase sorrow, it illuminates it. Like sunlight filtering through a stained glass window, it makes even brokenness beautiful. In meditation, joy often begins as a small warmth in the belly, spreading gently upward, not excitement, but ease. You might notice your breath deepening your shoulders, softening your face, loosening into a natural smile. It's the body's way of saying, "Thank you for stopping." The mind at rest rejoices. The Buddha once said that the greatest joy is the joy of letting go. It sounds paradoxical. How can losing bring happiness? But when we let go, we are no longer divided between what we want and what we have. We stop reaching and start resting. That rest is joy. Try this practice as you breathe in silently. Say, "This moment." As you breathe out, say, "Enough." Feel how the body settles into those words. In that space, you will find that contentment has always been there waiting for you to stop searching. Joy also grows through service. When we act with kindness, not for reward, but because it feels natural, the heart expands. Like a lamp lighting another lamp, our joy multiplies without ever diminishing. You may have noticed when you truly help someone, it is not only they who are lifted, you too become lighter. Compassion and joy are twins. Each nourishes the other. There was once a potter who made bowls for the monastery. One day, a visitor admired his work and asked, "Do you sell them?" The potter replied, "No, I give them away. Each bowl holds a little of my joy. If I sell it, the joy will shrink. If I give it, it will grow." The visitor laughed, thinking it was superstition. But years later, he returned carrying one of the bowls he had received. The clay was cracked, but he said, "Somehow, it still holds water." The potter smiled. That's what joy does, even when the form breaks, it still holds. To live joyfully is to live lightly, not careless, but without burden. It is to dance without needing music, to smile without needing reason. When the heart is free, every breath becomes celebration. And yet, joy must be protected not by walls, but by mindfulness. Without awareness, joy can easily slip into attachment, the wish to keep pleasant things forever. But mindfulness teaches us to enjoy, without clinging, to hold beauty like a butterfly on the palm, gentle enough not to harm, free enough to let it go. As the day fades and the sky turns gold, notice how the light does not resist leaving. It withdraws with grace. That is how joy ends each moment, with gratitude, not grief. When we truly understand this, we see that joy is not separate from peace. They are the same still water seen in sunlight and moonlight, different reflections of the same truth. And as we step further into this journey, we will explore that peace itself, Shanti, the calm beyond thought, where neither joy nor sorrow remains, but only the quiet presence of being fully alive. Peace is not the silence of the world, but the silence within the world. It is not the absence of sound or struggle, but the quiet understanding that everything is already in its right place. The Buddha did not promise that the winds would cease. He promised that one could find stillness even while they blow. That stillness, calm yet awake, is true peace. We often think of peace as something to attain, a distant state reserved for saints or sages. But peace is not a reward. It is our natural condition waiting beneath the noise of thought. When we stop chasing after calm and simply notice what is peace, reveals itself like the moon appearing when clouds drift away. Once a student asked his teacher, "Master, how can I find peace?" The teacher led him to a lake. The surface was rippling with wind. The master said, "Look at the lake." The student frowned. "I can't see my reflection. The water's too disturbed." The teacher nodded. "Wait." They sat quietly. After a while, the wind stilled and the water became smooth. "Now ask the master." The student smiled. "Now I see," the master said. "That is peace, not something you create, but something that appears when agitation ends." In meditation, you may notice this too. At first, the mind feels like a pond full of rain thoughts fall one after another. But if you stay long enough, simply breathing, not judging the surface, settles by itself. You cannot force calmness. You can only stop disturbing it. Peace is not born from control, but from understanding. Peace does not mean we stop feeling. It means we feel fully without being overwhelmed. Like a deep ocean that remains still beneath its waves, peace lives under every emotion. Joy, sorrow, anger, love, they all dance on the surface, but underneath lies the steady depth of being. When we learn to sink below the waves, life no longer tosses us about. It carries us gently. There was once a village that suffered from constant drought. The people dug wells and built dams, but water remained scarce. Then a quiet monk came and told them, "There is water beneath your feet." They laughed. The ground was dry and cracked. Yet one farmer believed him. Day after day, he dug in silence. The neighbors mocked him. But one morning, his shovel struck wet earth, and water burst forth. From that day, the whole village thrived. Peace is that underground spring. It's been there all along. We just have to dig past our noise, fear, and doubt to reach it. We lose peace, not because life is cruel, but because we forget how to return to ourselves. The mind keeps running into the past with regret, into the future with anxiety. But the present is where peace waits patiently like a faithful friend. Each breath is an invitation back home. When you inhale, you gather the scattered pieces of yourself. When you exhale, you release what no longer serves. The simple rhythm of breath in and out mirrors the universe's own rhythm: expansion and return, creation and rest. To live in harmony with that rhythm is to live in peace. There was a time when a monk asked the Buddha master, "What do you do each day?" The Buddha replied, "I sit, I walk, I eat." The monk said, "But everyone does that." The Buddha smiled. "Yes, but when I sit, I know I am sitting. When I walk, I know I am walking. When I eat, I know I am eating." That awareness transforms the ordinary into sacredness. Peace is not found in special places. It is found in the way we touch each moment. Try it now when you drink water. Just drink. Feel it touch your lips. Cool your throat, nourish your body. Do not rush. That simple act done with awareness is meditation in motion. When life is lived like that, even washing a bowl becomes prayer. But peace is not only personal, it is collective. The peace in one heart touches another, like one lamp lighting many. A peaceful person does not impose calm, they radiate it. Their very presence softens rooms. When you meet someone like that, you feel as if the noise in your mind lowers its volume. That is the invisible power of peace, contagious, yet silent. There was once a story of two monks crossing a forest during a storm. One kept complaining, "The wind is too cold, the path too long, the thunder too loud." The other walked in silence, smiling. When asked later how he endured it, he said, "The storm outside was strong, but I refused to let it enter my heart." The world will always have storms, but peace begins the moment you decide not to invite them inside. Peace is not passive, it has great strength. To remain calm in chaos requires courage, not indifference. It takes power to respond rather than react, to breathe instead of lash out. That power is gentleness, a gentleness so deep that it cannot be broken. As peace deepens, it becomes something even subtler: equanimity. This is the ability to hold all of life in open hands. Gain and loss, praise and blame, birth and death, all pass through those hands like sand through fingers. Nothing clings, nothing is rejected. What remains is vast acceptance, the quiet wisdom of thus it is. In this acceptance, joy and sorrow lose their sharp edges. You see that every experience, pleasant or painful, is simply another wave on the sea of awareness. You do not need to label them. You only need to witness. When we live this way, life ceases to feel like a battle. It becomes a song, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, but always beautiful in its impermanence. You stop trying to conduct it, and instead allow yourself to be one of its notes. And as that song fades into stillness, a gentle realization dawns. Peace is not the destination, nor even the journey. Peace is the traveler, you, me, all beings moving through time like wind, through the reeds, unbound, unafraid, untouched. Now, as we continue this path, we shall step into the heart of acceptance, learning how surrender does not mean weakness, but wisdom. How yielding like water can overcome the hardest stone. Acceptance is often misunderstood as resignation, as if to accept means to give up. But the Buddha's acceptance is not passive. It is the most profound act of wisdom. It is the recognition that life moves according to causes and conditions, and that peace arises when we stop fighting what already is. To accept is not to agree, but to see clearly, to see that resisting reality only deepens suffering. There was once a farmer who lost his horse. The neighbors came and said, "What misfortune?" The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild stallions. The neighbors exclaimed, "What luck?" Again, the farmer said, "Maybe." The next week, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses and broke his leg. "What tragedy," cried the villagers. "Maybe," said the farmer. Soon after, soldiers came to recruit young men for war, but the farmer's son with his broken leg was spared. "What blessing," people said. "Maybe," said the farmer again. That story holds a quiet truth: we do not see the whole picture. Life unfolds beyond our judgments of good or bad. Acceptance is the art of not rushing to label. When we allow things to be, the world softens. The mind ceases to demand constant explanations and begins to rest in trust. Acceptance is also an act of humility. It says, "I don't control everything." This humility is not defeat. It's freedom, because the moment you stop trying to hold the ocean in your hands, you realize you can float. There was once a bamboo grove that faced a fierce storm. The tall trees nearby broke under the wind, but the bamboo bent low and survived. When the sun returned, the grove stood upright again, whispering softly in the breeze. Strength that refuses to bend will shatter. Only what yields can endure. The Buddha compared this to the mind that accepts reality as it is. When we resist life, we break. When we yield, we heal. Acceptance begins with the self. Many of us carry silent wars inside: regret for the past, shame for what we couldn't do, blame for not being who we think we should be. But how can peace enter a heart that rejects itself? The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anyone in the universe, deserve your love and affection." To accept yourself is to stop dividing your being into good and bad, worthy and unworthy. It is to embrace your humanity, fully knowing that even mistakes have led you here to awareness. Sometimes acceptance feels like standing in the rain without an umbrella, exposed, raw, unprotected. Yet it is in that exposure that we learn tenderness. The rain does not punish. It simply falls. When we stop wishing it away, we start feeling its coolness, its cleansing touch. In that moment, something inside whispers, "This too is life." A woman once asked a monk, "How can I forgive those who hurt me?" The monk picked up a stone and dropped it into a pond. "What happens?" he asked. "Ripples," she said. "Do you try to stop them?" "No," she replied. "They stop themselves." The monk smiled. "Then why not let your pain do the same?" Acceptance is like that, allowing the ripples to fade on their own, without stirring the water further. We often think acceptance means no action, but that is not so. It means acting from clarity, not from resistance. When we see clearly what can be changed and what cannot, our efforts become skillful. We stop exhausting ourselves, fighting storms we cannot calm, and instead learn to build shelters of mindfulness. In daily life, acceptance can look like a soft smile when plans fall apart. It can be the patience to listen instead of argue, the courage to say, "I don't know," or the wisdom to step back when pride wants to step forward. Acceptance is not weakness, it is grace in motion. Imagine standing by the sea. Each wave comes and goes, and no two are ever the same. You do not shout at the waves to behave differently. You watch, you breathe, you let them pass. The sea remains the sea. You remain the watcher. That is the essence of acceptance. The mind that accepts is like open space. Whatever enters can stay until it leaves. Nothing clings, nothing stains. It does not mean apathy. It means harmony. It's the ability to say yes this too, and in saying yes to find peace. One evening, an old monk lit a candle and placed it before his disciples. This flame, he said, will burn as long as it has oil. When it goes out, will you mourn it? The students shook their heads. Then why mourn your own changes, he continued. When the oil of this life is spent, the flame simply returns to the source of light. To accept impermanence is to stop fearing change. When we understand that everything is borrowed, this body, this breath, this moment, gratitude replaces attachment. The heart no longer grasps, it bows. Acceptance does not make life perfect. It makes life possible. It gives us room to breathe, to grow, to begin again. Like a seed buried in darkness, acceptance opens the soil for transformation. Without it, nothing can sprout. In time, we learn that surrender is not falling. It's the beginning of flight. The bird must let go of the branch to meet the wind. So too must we release our tight grip on how things should be to experience the vastness of how things are. And when that surrender deepens, something miraculous happens. Peace turns into trust, a deep, silent faith that even when you cannot see the path ahead, the path is walking through you. In the next part, we will step into that faith, exploring how trust in the Dharma in life and in ourselves becomes the invisible bridge between fear and freedom. Trust is the quiet companion of peace. It is what allows the heart to rest even when the road ahead disappears into mist. The Buddha called it sada confidence in the Dharma, the way things are. It is not blind belief nor dependence on miracles. True trust is born from understanding, from seeing directly that life moves with wisdom deeper than our control. To trust is to lean into the unknown without collapsing. It is to say, I don't know what will come, but I will walk with mindfulness, and that will be enough. In this way, trust is not an escape from uncertainty. It is our way through it. Once a monk and his disciple were crossing a wide river. The disciple hesitated, worried about the strong current. "Master, how do I know where to step?" he asked. The monk replied, "Lift your foot, place it down, and the river will show you." Step by step, the young monk crossed safely. Later, he realized that faith does not remove the river. It allows you to move through it without drowning. In the same way, we are all crossing rivers of change, of loss, of doubt. Sometimes the current feels too strong, but trust teaches us that there is ground beneath even the murkiest waters. Every breath is proof of that. Each inhale says you are still here. Each exhale whispers, keep going. There was once a fisherman who spent nights at sea without lanterns. When asked if he wasn't afraid of the darkness, he smiled. "The stars know the way better than I do." That is the essence of trust, to know that there is an order, an intelligence far greater than our plans. But trust does not mean inaction. It does not mean crossing your arms and waiting for fate. It means doing your part with sincerity, then releasing what lies beyond your reach. The Buddha taught work diligently for your own liberation, but do not cling to results. To trust is to do your best and let the rest unfold as it must. When trust is weak, fear grows. The mind begins to build stories. What if I fail? What if I lose? What if I'm alone? But when trust is strong, fear loses its grip. You see that failure and success are just two sides of the same turning wheel. Both are teachers. Both pass. Once a farmer sowed seeds in his field, but doubted they would sprout. Each morning he dug them up to check. Of course, they never grew. The wise know that growth requires patience and trust in unseen work. When you plant kindness, honesty, or compassion, you may not see the result tomorrow, but the Dharma is always moving quietly, nurturing every seed. Sometimes the hardest thing to trust is our own heart. We have fallen, erred, doubted, and so we question our worth. But the Buddha never asked his followers to be perfect, only to be awake. Even a single candle can dispel darkness. Even a flicker of sincerity can begin the path anew. There was once a sculptor who carved statues from stone. One day he struck too hard and broke the figure's arm. He sighed in despair. A passing monk saw his sadness and said, "Perhaps the stone is showing you its true shape." The sculptor looked again and realized the broken arm revealed a graceful curve that had been hidden before. Sometimes life's breaks are not mistakes, but invitations to trust that something better is being formed. Trust grows in the soil of patience. It asks us to stop demanding that the universe reveal its plan immediately. You cannot rush dawn. You can only open the window. In the same way, when you relax your grip on the timeline of your life, you begin to notice that things bloom exactly when they are ready, never before, never after. The Buddha once compared faith to a bird with two wings, trust and discernment. If you have only trust, you may drift into naivety. If you have only discernment, you become skeptical and cold. Together, they create balance to see clearly, yet still believe in goodness. Trust also has a fragrance humility. The one who trusts life no longer insists on controlling every detail. They understand that what comes through countless conditions, many unseen. So they walk gently, speak softly, and act with care. They do not need to be certain to be at peace. When you live this way, even difficulties become part of the dance. The rain, the drought, the storm, all are woven into the same pattern. Trust allows you to see that the very forces that shake you also shape you. The wind that bends the grass is the same wind that carries the scent of spring. Try this simple practice. Close your eyes and recall one event in your life that once felt unbearable. Then notice what it brought you: a lesson, a friendship, a new direction, a deeper strength. Whisper to yourself, "I did not see it then, but life was helping me." That whisper is faith returning home. There is a verse in the Dhammapada: "From trust arises joy. From trust arises peace. From trust arises love. From trust arises the path." When you trust, you stop rushing. You move through life like a leaf carried by a clear stream, not aimless, but guided by a current greater than yourself. The mind rests, the heart softens, and the world for once feels like a friend. And in that stillness of trust, another doorway appears, the doorway of contentment, where one no longer asks for more, because one finally realizes that this moment, just as it is already enough. Contentment is the quiet art of saying, "This is enough." It is not the satisfaction of those who have everything, but the peace of those who have learned to appreciate what they already hold. The Buddha called it santuti, the treasure of contentment. He said, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." We live in a world that constantly whispers more success, more comfort, more attention. But the more we chase, the further peace runs. Desire is like a fire. No matter how much wood you throw in it, keeps burning. Contentment is the cool rain that softens that fire, turning craving into gratitude. Once a wanderer came upon a monk meditating beneath a tree. The monk had only a bowl, a robe, and a smile. The wanderer laughed. "How can you be happy with so little?" The monk looked up and replied, "How can you be unhappy with so much?" That simple exchange contains the essence of the teaching. Happiness does not depend on how much we own, but on how deeply we see. When our eyes open to the miracle of the ordinary, a breath, a bird's call, the warmth of tea in our hands, the endless hunger begins to fade. Contentment is not complacency. It does not mean we stop growing or caring. It means we stop grasping. We still act, still create, still dream, but without the feverish need to control outcomes. Our work becomes offering rather than ambition. Our success becomes service rather than pride. There was once a king who built a magnificent palace. When it was finished, he realized that his heart felt strangely hollow. So he summoned a sage and asked, "What do I still lack?" The sage gave him a small bowl of rice and said, "Eat this mindfully." The king obeyed. As he lifted each grain, he noticed its scent, its taste, its warmth. For the first time, he truly ate. The sage smiled. "What you lacked. Majesty was not possession, but presence. Presence is the secret door to contentment. When we are fully here, we realize how rich we already are. Look around you now, the air entering your lungs, the light resting on your skin, the ground supporting your feet. How much had to come together for this single moment to exist? The sun, the rain, the hands of countless people, all have conspired for you to breathe right now. What else could you ask for? Sometimes we think contentment means no desire at all. But that's not so. It means right desire, the kind that moves from love, not lack. When we act from love, even small things bring joy. When we act from lack, even the greatest success feels empty. There was a potter who spent years trying to make the perfect bowl. Every imperfection tormented him. One day, an old traveler saw him working and said, "Why do you fight the clay? It only wants to be what it is." That night, the potter sat in silence. The next morning, he began shaping without struggle. The bowls that emerged were simple, imperfect, yet full of grace. People said his work had spirit. The potter smiled, for he had stopped trying to be perfect and started being peaceful. In the same way, when we stop demanding perfection from life, everything begins to breathe again. The world no longer feels like a test. It becomes a companion. Contentment turns the ordinary into miracle after miracle. The sound of rain becomes a symphony. The act of breathing becomes prayer. Try this reflection. Take a deep breath and silently say, "Enough." Feel what those words do inside you. The mind may resist, it has been trained to chase, but underneath the noise, you will sense a sweetness, a quiet relief. Enough is the most healing mantra. It loosens the knots of greed and opens the door to joy. The Buddha once told a story about a man who wandered the desert, parched and desperate for water. When he finally found a spring, he drank deeply and said, "Now I have everything." That is contentment, not owning the spring, but quenching your thirst with gratitude. We can practice contentment in small ways by savoring our meals, by thanking the people who cross our path, by pausing before complaining. Each small act of appreciation trains the heart to dwell in abundance rather than lack. There was a monk who kept a single flower on his windowsill. When it withered, he replaced it with a stone. A visitor asked why. The monk replied, "When the flower bloomed, I saw beauty. When it died, I saw impermanence. Now I see both." That is the heart of contentment, to find peace not in what changes, but in seeing clearly that everything changes. To live contently does not mean that sorrow disappears. It means that even sorrow finds its place. When joy comes, we smile. When loss comes, we bow. Life remains complete in both. A full moon or a cloudy night, the same sky holds them. As contentment deepens, the mind grows still. You stop comparing, competing, proving. You walk, gently speak, kindly, rest easily. You understand that what you have is already enough to awaken. The Buddha reached enlightenment, not in a palace, but under a tree, not by gaining, but by letting go. And when the heart finally rests in enough compassion, expands effortlessly. For the one who is content needs little and therefore has much to give. Contentment is the soil from which generosity grows. Generosity not of wealth alone, but of presence, patience, and peace. And so, as this chapter of stillness closes, a new fragrance begins to rise, the fragrance of generosity, the act of giving not from abundance, but from the overflowing heart that has discovered its own completeness. Generosity is love in motion. It is compassion made visible, the natural blooming of a heart that has known contentment. When the Buddha spoke of the path to awakening, he began not with meditation or philosophy, but with dana giving. For giving is the first gesture of freedom. It loosens the hand that clings. True generosity does not ask, "What will I get?" It asks, "What can I share?" It is not measured by the size of the gift, but by the softness of the intention. Even a small cup of water offered with sincerity ripples endlessly through the world. Once in the time of the Buddha, a poor woman wished to give an offering. All she had was a single oil lamp. She lit it and placed it before the shrine. By morning, the grand lamps of the rich had burned out, but hers still glowed. The monks marveled and asked the Buddha why. He said, "Because her gift was pure, she gave with faith, not with fear of losing." The woman's lamp has never gone out in the memory of the Dharma. Generosity is not only in objects, it lives in time, in attention, and presence. When you truly listen to someone without interrupting, that is giving. When you forgive instead of retaliate, that is giving. When you smile at a stranger, offering them a moment of warmth in a cold world, that too is giving. The Buddha once said, "If people knew the joy of giving as I do, they would not let a single meal pass without sharing." For the act of giving dissolves the illusion of separation. Each time we give, we remember that what we call mine has always been borrowed from the vast web of life. There was once a young monk who kept a single blanket. One night, hearing a beggar shivering outside the monastery wall, he tore the blanket in half and shared it. That night, he dreamt of standing under a radiant moon, and half the light rested upon him, half upon the beggar. When he awoke, his heart felt lighter than ever. The joy of giving is like that, not the joy of loss, but of shared brightness. Generosity also teaches impermanence. When we give freely, we accept that nothing is truly ours, to keep not our wealth, not our youth, not even our breath. Everything is entrusted to us for a while. To give is to participate in the natural flow of life, like the cloud that becomes rain, the rain that becomes river, the river that becomes sea. Nothing hoards, nothing clings, yet everything is nourished. A merchant once asked a monk, "How can I know if my giving is pure?" The monk replied, "Give until it feels like joy, not sacrifice. If it hurts the heart, there is still holding. If it frees the heart, it is true giving." Generosity transforms both giver and receiver. The one who gives loses fear. The one who receives loses despair. And sometimes they change places without realizing it. There was a time when a wealthy man offered food to a beggar, but the beggar smiled and said, "Today, I gave you the chance to open your heart." Both bowed, for both had received. In meditation, you can practice generosity inwardly. When a painful memory arises, instead of pushing it away, offer it compassion. May you be at peace. When joy appears, share it silently with all beings. May all who suffer taste this light. In this way, the mind becomes a field of giving, every breath an offering, every thought a wish for the world's well-being. Generosity also extends to the earth itself. Every time you walk gently, every time you consume mindfully, you give back to the soil that sustains you. To live simply is also to give for simplicity, leave space for others to breathe. The Bodhisattva gives not out of pity, but out of kinship. The earth, the sky, the rivers they give without asking. Why should we do less? There was once a tree that stood by a busy road. Travelers rested beneath its shade, plucked its fruit, carved their initials into its bark. Over the years, its branches grew thin, yet it never stopped giving. When it finally fell, people used its wood for warmth in winter. Even in death, it gave comfort. Such is the spirit of true generosity. It gives until giving becomes its nature. The Buddha said that the greatest gift is the gift of fearlessness. When you comfort someone, when you make them feel safe, when you show them they are not alone, that is giving fearlessness. Words of kindness, gestures of patience, silent prayers, all can become offerings that lighten the world. If you wish to practice generosity, start small. Share your seat, your time, your smile. And when the heart hesitates, will I have enough? Remember that the more you give, the larger your heart becomes. The law of the universe is that what is shared multiplies, what is hoarded decays. Try this reflection before you sleep. Recall one thing you gave today. Maybe it was a helping hand. Maybe it was forgiveness. Feel its echo in your chest, that quiet warmth, that gentle ease. That is the joy the Buddha spoke of, the joy that expects nothing in return. Generosity, compassion, and contentment are not separate virtues. They are three petals of the same flower, the flower of awakening. When you give from contentment and guided by compassion, the fragrance of peace spreads naturally around you. And beyond generosity, another petal awaits mindfulness, the art of being fully awake in every breath, so that even our smallest acts become sacred. Mindfulness is the art of coming home not to a place, but to the present moment. It is the lamp that reveals what is already here, the bridge between knowing and being. The Buddha called it sati, the awareness that remembers to remember. Without mindfulness, life rushes by like scenery glimpsed from a speeding train. With mindfulness, even a single breath can contain eternity. To be mindful is not to escape life's noise, but to hear it differently. It means walking slowly enough to notice the sound of your own footsteps, eating gently enough to taste gratitude in every bite, listening deeply enough to hear what another heart is truly saying beneath its words. Mindfulness transforms the ordinary into miracle, not by changing the world, but by changing how we see it. There was once a monk who asked his teacher, "Master, what is the path?" The teacher replied, "Awareness." The monk asked, "And the goal?" The teacher smiled, "Awareness. The path and the goal are the same, because the destination is not elsewhere, it is now." When we live without mindfulness, the mind behaves like a restless monkey, swinging from thought to thought, fear to desire, past to future. But when we breathe mindfully, the monkey grows calm, and we realize that the cage we felt trapped in was never locked. The door has always been open. We simply forgot to look. Once the Buddha and his disciples were walking through a forest. The birds sang, the leaves rustled. The Buddha paused and said, "Do you hear that?" The disciples nodded. That he said is the sound of the world when the mind is still. To be mindful is to live with eyes of wonder. You begin to see how each moment is interconnected, how the morning dew reflects the entire sky, how a single kind word can change the weather in another person's soul. Awareness brings reverence. Reverence brings peace. In the practice of mindfulness, the breath is our teacher. The breath never hurries, never hesitates, never abandons us. It is our oldest companion, patiently waiting for our attention. Every inhale says, receive. Every exhale says, release. To follow the breath is to walk beside truth. Try this now. Breathe in and silently say, here. Breathe out and say, now. Do this 3 times and feel the world settle around you, the air thickening with presence, the heart unclenching, the body softening. You have returned home. Mindfulness also means knowing the body as it truly is, not as we imagine or wish it to be. The Buddha often reminded his disciples to contemplate the body with compassion, not disgust. This is my body, impermanent, vulnerable, miraculous. Through mindfulness, the body ceases to be an object of vanity or shame. It becomes a temple of experience where life meets awareness in each sensation. Once a novice was sweeping the monastery courtyard. He complained, "The leaves keep falling. I'll never finish." The abbot said, "Then stop sweeping to finish. Sweep to be aware." The next morning, the novice swept again. He noticed the weight of the broom, the crunch of leaves, the smell of earth. The work had not changed, but he had. That day, he found peace in what once felt endless. In daily life, mindfulness is both anchor and compass. When anger arises, mindfulness sees it before it speaks. When joy appears, mindfulness savors it before it fades. It is the gentle friend who whispers, "Be here whenever the mind runs astray." A woman once told a Zen teacher, "My mind is too busy to meditate." The teacher poured tea into her cup until it overflowed. "See," he said, "when the cup is full, nothing more can enter. Empty your cup not by force, but by attention." The woman began watching her breath. 1 inhale, 1 exhale. Slowly, the noise inside her softened. She discovered that mindfulness doesn't silence the world. It silences the struggle against it. With mindfulness, we learn to meet our emotions like guests, greeting them kindly, offering them tea, and letting them go when they are ready. We do not suppress sadness. We simply notice sadness is here. We do not chase joy. We simply smile. Joy is here. In that noticing, everything is allowed to flow. There was once a saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." The difference is awareness. The awakened one still lives an ordinary life, works, eats, laughs, weeps, but every act is luminous, every breath deliberate. Awareness turns the mundane into sacred ritual. Mindfulness also teaches us to listen, truly. Listen. When someone speaks, listen not to reply, but to understand. Hear their tone, their pauses, the tremor beneath their words. To listen this way is to love without conditions. When the heart becomes mindful, kindness follows naturally. You cannot be truly present without also being gentle. The present moment is tender, fragile, like the surface of water. Step upon it too quickly and it breaks. Step softly and it reflects the sky. Through mindfulness, we come to realize that each moment is both fleeting and eternal. Fleeting in time, eternal in truth. This breath will never return, yet the awareness that knows it is timeless. In that realization, fear dissolves. You no longer cling to what comes or goes, because you know what you are can never be lost. In time, mindfulness matures into insight, vipassana, the clear seeing that penetrates illusion. You begin to see not just what is happening, but why it happens, how it arises, and how it ceases. This insight is the doorway to liberation itself. As we continue walking this path, let us now step through that doorway into the light of insight, where understanding transforms suffering into wisdom, and every moment becomes a teacher on the road to awakening. Insight is the fruit of mindfulness ripened by time. When awareness deepens enough, it begins to see through appearances, through the surface of life, into its true nature. The Buddha called this vipassana, clear seeing. It is not mystical sight, but the simple, unclouded vision of things as they really are. We live most of our lives seeing through the fog of perception. We mistake shadows for substance, emotions for truth, and the flicker of moments for permanence. Insight is like the morning sun dissolving the fog. Suddenly, we realize the mountain has always been there, vast, unmoving, eternal. We just couldn't see it before. Once a monk meditated beside a stream. Each day, he watched leaves float past, carried away by the current. One morning, he saw a leaf caught in an eddy, spinning endlessly in place. He leaned closer and whispered, "That is me." In that instant, he understood how craving traps the mind, not because the stream stops flowing, but because we keep circling the same desire. Insight frees us by showing that the river never holds on. Insight begins with observation, but it deepens into understanding. You notice. This thought arises. This thought fades. This feeling comes. This feeling goes. Slowly, you begin to see the laws of impermanence, cause and effect, unfolding in every breath. What once seemed random reveals pattern. What once felt personal becomes universal. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You begin to see, this too is the nature of life. There was once a traveler who entered a hall of mirrors and panicked at the sight of 100 reflections. He thought he was surrounded by strangers. Only when he touched one of the mirrors did he realize they were all himself. So it is with insight. We stop fighting the reflections and begin to understand their source. The world no longer appears hostile because we see it as the mind's own play. True insight brings both humility and wonder. You recognize that nothing stands alone, not a thought, not a breath, not a star. Every sound depends on silence. Every being depends on countless causes. Seeing this arrogance melts away. How can we boast of I or mine when everything is interwoven? There was once a poet who sat by the sea and wrote, "The wave is the sea pretending to be small." That is the voice of insight, realizing that what we call self is the ocean expressing itself as one wave destined to return to the whole. As insight deepens, suffering transforms. You still feel pain, but you no longer cling to it as my pain. You see that suffering arises when we resist impermanence. Every loss, every wound becomes a lesson in letting go. The heart learns to bow to what is rather than mourn what was. The Buddha described 3 kinds of insight that free the mind: the understanding of impermanence, anicca, of suffering dukkha, and of non-self anatta. When you see deeply that all things change, that clinging brings pain, and that no separate self exists to control it, all the walls of illusion collapse. In their place arises vast peace, not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of wisdom. Once a disciple asked the Buddha, "What do you gain from meditation?" The Buddha replied, "Nothing." Surprised, the disciple said, "Then what's the use?" The Buddha smiled. "Let me tell you what I have lost: anger, fear, desire, ignorance. Insight does not add, it subtracts. It strips away what is false until only truth remains. In daily life, insight shows itself in small recognitions, the awareness that every irritation hides a lesson in patience, that every failure points to humility, that every encounter, pleasant or not, reveals something about the mind's attachments. When we stop blaming the world and begin learning from it, wisdom begins to bloom. A teacher once told his student, "When you walk, see where your feet meet the earth. When you eat, see where the food becomes you. When you speak, see where the words are born." The student practiced and one day exclaimed, "Everything is connected." The teacher smiled. "No, everything is connection." That was his awakening. Insight doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It means you no longer need it to be. You see joy and sorrow as two faces of the same truth, light and shadow painting the same world. Insight brings compassion for yourself, for others, for the fragile miracle of being alive. As the Buddha said, "One who sees the Dharma sees me." To see the Dharma is to see the pattern of reality, not as a theory, but as living experience. You begin to notice that nothing is wasted. Even suffering, when understood, becomes fertilizer for wisdom. There was once a farmer who complained about stones in his field. A wise friend told him, "Don't throw them away. Stack them into walls." Years later, those walls sheltered his crops from the wind. Insight is like that. It doesn't remove difficulty. It rearranges it into understanding. When insight deepens, fear begins to dissolve. You realize there is nothing to protect, nothing to lose, nothing to become. Life flows through you like wind through bamboo, moving, singing free. You no longer chase awakening, because you see that awakening was never separate from this very breath. Try this reflection. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and silently say, "Let me see." Not "let me have" or "let me change," just "let me see." Each time you do this, another veil lifts. You begin to glimpse the perfection hidden in imperfection, the eternity hidden in this passing instant. Insight is not a possession. It is a way of living. When you walk with insight, every moment becomes revelation. The sound of a child laughing, the creak of a door, even the silence between words, all become the voice of the Dharma, speaking to you directly. And as insight becomes steady, something luminous begins to arise within wisdom. Compassion, the union of clear seeing and open-hearted love. From this union springs the awakened life itself. In the next part, we will step into that luminous union to explore how wisdom and compassion together form the bridge between humanity and enlightenment, between the finite and the boundless. Wisdom and compassion are often spoken of as two wings of the same bird. Neither can fly alone. Wisdom without compassion becomes cold and distant, a light too sharp to warm. Compassion without wisdom becomes blind and exhausting, a fire that burns without direction. When the two unite, they create balance, the serene strength of a heart that understands, and the gentle clarity of a mind that loves. The Buddha's awakening was not a solitary enlightenment for himself alone. It was the birth of boundless compassion, guided by infinite wisdom. On that night beneath the Bodhi tree, he saw the truth of suffering, and its end not as an idea, but as the living pulse of all beings. His heart opened like the morning sky, embracing all sentient life. From that moment, he walked the earth, not as a seeker, but as a light. Wisdom is the seeing that frees us from illusion. Compassion is the movement that carries that freedom into the world. Wisdom says, "Nothing truly belongs to me." Compassion says, Then let me share everything. Together, they whisper, all beings are one. There was once a monk who spent years studying scriptures, but still felt restless. He visited a hermit known for his serene smile. Master, he said, I have learned much, but I am not at peace. The hermit poured him a bowl of water and added salt. Taste this, he said. The monk grimaced. It was bitter. The hermit then took the same handful of salt and threw it into a nearby lake. Now drink from here. The water was cool, clear, and sweet. Do you understand? Asked the hermit. The salt is suffering. Wisdom enlarges the heart so compassion can dissolve the bitterness. That is the balance of awakening a mind vast enough to see truth, a heart wide enough to hold the world. Wisdom knows that all things are impermanent. Compassion still reaches out to comfort what is transient. Wisdom sees that there is no separate self. Compassion still bows before every face. Wisdom is the mirror. Compassion is the reflection. They are not two. Once the Buddha came across a man wounded by an arrow. Instead of asking who shot it or why, he gently removed the arrow first. Later, he told his disciples, the wise do not delay healing with analysis. That is compassion guided by wisdom, helping first, understanding later. In our lives, this union can be practiced every day. When someone speaks harshly, wisdom reminds us, this anger arises from their suffering. Compassion responds, may I not add to it? When life disappoints, wisdom whispers, this too shall pass. Compassion answers, then let me hold it gently while it's here. The Bodhisattva embodies this union. Though free from the cycle of rebirth, they choose to stay among beings guiding others to liberation. Their vow is not driven by obligation, but by love that sees clearly. The Bodhisattva's compassion is not sentimental. It is fearless. They walk through suffering as a physician walks through a plague with skill, with calm, with purpose. A story tells of a bodhisattva who carried a lamp through a dark forest. Thieves followed him, hoping to steal it. Each time they drew near, he stopped, turned, and lit another lamp, handing it to them. Why, they asked. He replied, the darkness is wide enough for us all to need light. That is compassion illuminated by wisdom, giving without depletion. Wisdom teaches us to see the emptiness of all things. Compassion teaches us to fill that emptiness with love. When we truly understand that there is no fixed self, we stop protecting our little circle of me and mine. The heart expands to include everyone. The suffering of others is no longer their problem. It becomes the wind that moves us to act. Sometimes compassion means offering help. Sometimes it means offering space. Sometimes it simply means being present without fixing. Wisdom helps us know which one is needed. Without wisdom, even kindness can wound. Without compassion, even truth can cut. Together, they heal. In meditation, you can practice this unity. As you breathe in, imagine drawing light into the heart, clarity, understanding. As you breathe out, imagine that light spreading outward, warmth, love, care. Inhale wisdom. Exhale compassion. Slowly, the boundary between them dissolves, and you realize they were never separate. A Zen master once said, when I was young, I wanted to save the world. Now I see that saving one moment of awareness is saving the world. Each time we respond to suffering with understanding instead of anger, we lighten the collective pain of humanity. Every act of mindful compassion sends ripples across the unseen web of life. In this way, wisdom and compassion become our natural state, like two currents of one river meeting and parting, flowing endlessly toward the sea. You no longer ask, what should I do, because your very being becomes the doing. You speak kindly without effort, help without pride, love without fear. And when the mind and heart move together in this harmony, awakening is no longer an idea. It is life itself lived fully and freely. The Buddha did not teach us to escape the world, but to walk through it with eyes open and heart unguarded. As the night of ignorance gives way to the dawn of wisdom-compassion, another light begins to shimmer, the light of awakening or enlightenment itself, where all opposites dissolve and reality is seen as one undivided whole. Awakening is not the final step of the journey. It is the moment we realize there was never a journey at all. The Buddha called it Bodhi, the flowering of direct seeing. It is the instant when the eye of wisdom opens and recognizes the seeker. The path and the goal have always been one. For countless lifetimes, we wander through the forest of confusion, seeking peace outside ourselves. We chase shadows, calling them truth, and when they fade, we grieve. But awakening is like turning around to discover that what we sought has been walking beside us all along. It does not come from effort. It comes from release. There was once a student who asked his teacher, "What must I do to attain enlightenment?" The teacher replied, "Drop all effort." The student frowned. "But if I stop trying, won't I regress?" The teacher smiled. "You cannot fall from what you already are." At that moment, the student understood. Awakening is not becoming something new, but remembering what has always been true. The Buddha described awakening as the end of ignorance. It is not the acquisition of divine powers, nor escape from the world, but a clear and effortless knowing that all things arise and pass without self. It is the peace of a mirror that reflects everything, yet clings to nothing. Imagine a lake after the wind has passed. The water is still, the sky reflected perfectly. Clouds appear and vanish across its surface, but the lake remains unchanged. That is the awakened mind, open, clear, vast. It does not grasp joy or reject sorrow. It simply knows, this too arises, this too fades. One of the Buddha's disciples, Mahakashyapa, once sat beneath a tree while others argued about the meaning of the Dharma. The Buddha said nothing. He only held up a flower. All fell silent. Only Mahakashyapa smiled. That smile was awakening a wordless recognition that truth is not in explanations, but in direct experience. Awakening is not an event, but a way of being. You still eat, walk, work, and laugh, but something fundamental shifts. The sense of I no longer stands in the center. Life moves through you like wind through an open window. Nothing to defend, nothing to fear. Even pain becomes transparent, passing through the body without settling in the heart. Once there was a man who dreamt he was a butterfly. When he awoke, he wondered, "Am I a man dreaming I was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming I am a man?" Awakening is that moment of wonder when the boundaries of identity dissolve and we see that all forms are fleeting expressions of the same infinite source. The awakened do not escape the world. They embrace it completely. They see the sacred in every moment, in the laughter of a child, in the decay of leaves, in the silence between words. Nothing is ordinary anymore. Even the act of breathing becomes an expression of the universe knowing itself. Awakening is the great homecoming. The mind returns to its natural state, clear, compassionate, and still. No longer tossed by craving or aversion, it becomes like a lamp that burns without smoke. The Buddha said, "In this very body, within this very fathom-long body, is the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path leading to the cessation." The awakened one realizes that all realms exist within awareness itself. There was once a monk who asked, after enlightenment, what then? His teacher replied, "Carry water, chop wood." The monk pressed further. "But what is different?" The teacher answered, "Before you carried the world. Now the world carries you." The awakened heart does not seek to avoid suffering, for it sees that suffering and joy are not opposites, but waves on the same sea. The difference is that the awakened no longer drown. They ride the wave with grace, smiling even as it breaks. If you look at the Buddha's life after enlightenment, you will see he did not retreat into isolation. He spent 45 years walking dusty roads, teaching, listening, serving. Awakening did not separate him from humanity. It made him inseparable from it. For to awaken is to love everything, because there is no longer anything outside to exclude. A story tells that one evening after a long day of teaching, the Buddha sat under the stars. A disciple asked, "Master, are you tired?" The Buddha looked up and said, "How can the sky be tired? That is awakening, not the denial of weariness, but resting so deeply in awareness that nothing can disturb it." We often imagine enlightenment as a blazing light, but it is more like the quiet glow before dawn, soft, pervasive, unassuming. It does not shout, "I am free." It whispers, "I have always been." It is the deep exhale after lifetimes of holding breath. Try this reflection. Close your eyes, breathe slowly and silently. Ask what remains when I stop grasping at thoughts, names, and memories. Notice the stillness that answers. That stillness is not something you create. It is what you are. Awakening is simply trusting that stillness enough to rest there. To awaken is to live without separation, to see yourself in all beings and all beings in yourself. When a bird sings, it is your voice. When someone suffers, it is your pain. This is not metaphor. It is the direct experience of interbeing. The awakened walk gently because they know every step touches all of existence. And yet, awakening is not the end. It is the beginning of boundless compassion in action, the Bodhisattva's path, where enlightenment blossoms into service. For what use is freedom if it does not free others? As our journey continues, we will step into this final movement, the radiant way of the Bodhisattva, who, having awakened, chooses to remain in the world out of love, guiding others across the ocean of suffering with patience, wisdom, and joy. The Bodhisattva is the awakened heart that refuses to rest while others suffer. Having reached the shore of liberation, they turn back toward the stormy sea of existence, not out of obligation, but out of infinite love. The Bodhisattva is not a saint above humanity, but the most human of beings, one who has looked deeply into their own suffering and found in it the suffering of all. The Buddha said, "As a mother protects her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings." That boundless heart is the essence of the Bodhisattva. It beats not for one, but for all, not for reward, but from understanding. Compassion is no longer a choice, it is breath itself. There was once a monk who meditated in solitude for many years until he reached great peace. One day, while walking through a village, he saw a child crying beside her dying mother. A tremor ran through his calm. That night, he could not meditate. He realized that peace found apart from others was incomplete. The next morning, he gave up his cave and began tending the sick. When asked if he had abandoned enlightenment, he smiled, "I have found it again in her eyes." That is the vow of the Bodhisattva, to awaken over and over again in the faces of those who suffer, to see Buddha nature shining through every tear and to serve it with joy. The Bodhisattva does not deny pain. They transform it into compassion. Like the lotus that blooms in muddy water, Their love arises precisely from contact with the world's wounds. They do not escape samsara. They walk through it as light walks through shadow, untouched, yet illuminating everything. Once a disciple asked his master, "How does the bodhisattva endure the suffering of the world?" The master replied, "Like the moon reflected in 1,000 rivers, touching all, clinging to none." The bodhisattva sees that the world's pain and joy are not two. When you help another, you help yourself, for the boundary between giver and receiver has vanished. Their generosity is fearless because it flows from oneness. In the Lotus Sutra, it is said that Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, can take any form, man, woman, child, even wind or voice, to ease the pain of beings. This teaching is not myth. It is a reminder that compassion wears countless faces. Every time you act with kindness, you become that bodhisattva. There was once a fisherman who daily freed one fish from his net. When he died, the villagers said his life was ordinary. But the old monk who lived nearby whispered, "Each fish he freed was a prayer the ocean will never forget." The bodhisattva's actions may seem small, but each act ripples across lifetimes. The bodhisattva's strength lies in their vow, the bodhicitta, the awakened intention. It is the fire that keeps burning, even when the night is long. The vow says, "However innumerable beings are, I vow to save them. However inexhaustible defilements are, I vow to end them. However immeasurable dharma gates are, I vow to enter them. However unsurpassable the Buddha's way is, I vow to realize it." This vow is not about quantity, but sincerity. It is the endless willingness to love in a world that forgets love, to stay awake in a world that dreams. In daily life, the bodhisattva's spirit can be practiced through simple acts, listening deeply, speaking truthfully, forgiving quickly, serving quietly. Every time you put another's well-being before your pride, every time you respond to cruelty with patience, you walk the bodhisattva's path. A disciple once asked a great teacher, "When will I know I am walking this path?" The teacher said, "When another's pain moves you more than your own desire, that is when the bodhisattva is born within you, not in temples or texts, but in the moment you care more for healing than for winning." The bodhisattva's joy is unique. It is not the happiness of comfort, but the joy of usefulness, of being a bridge, a balm, a light. They find meaning not in avoiding suffering, but in transforming it. They understand that compassion is not a burden, but the purest expression of freedom. Once a student asked, "If the bodhisattva loves all beings, do they not suffer endlessly?" The teacher replied, "No. When a candle lights 1,000 others, it loses nothing. The bodhisattva burns joyfully, not in exhaustion, but in giving. That is their secret. They serve without attachment. They do not ask, will it make a difference? They know that every act of love already is the difference. They work as rain works, falling everywhere, asking nothing. Sometimes the bodhisattva teaches through silence, sometimes through words, sometimes through their mere presence. They are the mother comforting the stranger, helping the child, laughing. Wherever compassion appears, the bodhisattva is near. And yet their humility is profound. They never say, "I am enlightened." They bow before all beings, knowing that everyone they meet is a hidden teacher. The beggar reveals patience. The enemy reveals forgiveness. The friend reveals gratitude. To the bodhisattva, all are sacred. In meditation, you can awaken this vow within yourself. As you inhale, think, "May I awaken." As you exhale, think, "May all beings be free." Let the breath carry your love across the world. Slowly, the separation between I and others dissolves. You begin to understand the bodhisattva is not someone else. It is the potential within you that has been waiting to remember itself. As this realization deepens, compassion becomes spontaneous. You no longer try to be kind. Kindness becomes your nature. You no longer search for peace. Peace flows wherever you walk. And when countless beings walk this same path, each heart shining, each step guided by love, the world itself begins to awaken. Now, as we near the final turning of this journey, we will step into the heart of oneness, where the bodhisattva's vow becomes life itself, and all distinctions between self, other birth, and death dissolve into the vast ocean of the awakened mind. There comes a moment when the wind stops asking where it's going. It simply moves without resistance, without reason. That moment is nirvana, the stillness beyond becoming and ceasing, where all striving dissolves into suchness. The Buddha called it the unborn, the unmade, the unconditioned. It is not a place but a realization that nothing needs to be added, removed, or fixed. All has returned home. For many lifetimes we walk through the cycle of seeking joy, meaning salvation. Each teaching, each breath, each surrender leads us closer, until one day the seeker vanishes and only awareness remains. What we called eye turns to mist. What we called world becomes light. There is only knowing, infinite, gentle, clear. Once a monk asked the Buddha, "What happens to the awakened one after death?" The Buddha remained silent. When pressed again, he said, "To say they exist or do not exist is not correct. Like a flame blown out by the wind, it cannot be measured." That silence was not avoidance. It was truth itself. For what can you say of that which is beyond all words? Nirvana is not annihilation. It is awakening from the dream of separateness. It is the cool shade after a long journey under the sun. It is the peace that asks for nothing, because it has already become everything. Imagine a drop of water falling into the ocean. For a moment, it trembles on the surface, afraid of losing itself. Then it merges and discovers it was never separate from the ocean at all. That is nirvana. The drop is not lost. It has become infinite. For the awakened one, every sound, every breath, every passing cloud shines with the same clarity. The world does not disappear. It is simply seen in its true nature, luminous, impermanent, and perfect as it is. Life continues, but it is no longer personal. The mind no longer says, "I live." It whispers, "Life lives through me." There was once a disciple who, upon awakening, wept. His teacher asked, "Why do you cry?" The disciple said, "Because nothing has changed, and yet everything is free." That is the paradox of nirvana. It changes nothing, yet transforms everything. The trees still sway, the seasons still turn, but the heart no longer clings. Joy and sorrow, gain and loss come and go like passing songs. The awakened simply listens, smiling, knowing the music was never separate from the silence that holds it. The Buddha compared nirvana to the extinguishing of a flame, not destruction, but fulfillment. A lamp burns as long as there is oil. When the oil is gone, the flame rests. It does not suffer, it does not rejoice. It returns to its source. So too with the mind that is exhausted craving, it rests radiant and serene. For most of us, nirvana seems distant, something reserved for saints or sages. But the truth is simpler. Every moment of genuine peace, every breath of complete acceptance, every act of unselfish love is a glimpse of nirvana. It is not elsewhere. It is in the quiet spaces between our thoughts and the stillness beneath our wanting. Try to notice that stillness now. Between each inhale and exhale, there is a pause, brief, silent, infinite. That pause is not emptiness. It is the fullness of being. You cannot see it yet, it carries you through every moment of your life. In the Buddha's final days, his disciples wept. Ananda, his faithful attendant, asked, "How will we go on without you?" The Buddha replied, "Be a lamp unto yourselves. Take refuge in the Dharma. In this very body and mind, enlightenment is found." Then he lay down between two sal trees. As the petals fell, the earth trembled, not in sorrow, but in reverence. The Buddha's final words were, "All things that arise must pass away. Strive with diligence." He did not mean strive in struggle, but in presence the effort to remain awake moment by moment until no effort is needed. The Buddha entered parinirvana not as one escaping, but as one returning. The river merged with the sea. The flame became light everywhere. Those who have touched even a glimpse of this peace know that words can only point. The true experience is silence, a silence that is alive, not empty, still, but not dead. In that silence, everything sings: the wind, the stars, the very pulse of existence. Nirvana is the great return, the home you never truly left. The moment the heart stops demanding, the mind stops naming, and awareness shines by itself, you are already there. You are not on the path. You are the path. You are not in search of the truth. You are the truth moment to moment, breath to breath. There is a story of a man who looked for the moon's reflection in a pond. He stirred the water, desperate to see it clearly. When he grew tired, he stopped. The surface became still, and there it was, luminous, complete, always present. Enlightenment is like that: you stop stirring, and the reflection appears. The awakened one walks through life as a gentle breeze, unseen, yet cooling the heat of others' suffering. Their presence heals without words. They laugh easily, love deeply, and rest lightly in the world. They no longer seek to change life. They are life flowing as naturally as clouds across the sky. And so the journey ends where it began, in this moment, in this breath, in this boundless awareness watching itself. No beginning, no end, only the eternal unfolding of now. May these words, like small lamps, remind you of the light already within. May your steps be mindful, your heart vast, your love fearless. And when you forget, as all beings do, may the Dharma gently guide you home again and again until you realize you never left. This is nirvana, the silence beyond sorrow, the peace beyond peace, the smile of the Buddha reflected in all things.